Hey guys, so I am a little bit sick, so pardon, my voice potentially not sounding that great for this demo video, but I did want to make just a short little demo file and a demo video that goes through how to get characters to display some emotions, because going through the scenario, things are typically, in my scenario that I drew, the second scenario for the plea deal simulation, most of the emotions that the characters kind of were expressing were pretty neutral. In Jordy's simulation, which was the first one, she drew the characters as they had to go through a bit more expressive things. There was one face that was kind of, surprised. There's one that's a bit sad. In the jail scenarios, you have the characters looking a bit, kind of sadder or downtrodden. So, basically, as you're going through the scenario, things are happening and the emotional response needs to be appropriate, whether that's them being, just neutral. We have like a neutral posture right here now, or happy or sad, and you also need to transition through those emotions correctly between shots. So here I'm just going to play my little file where I've just drawn the character expressing a few different emotions, so you can just kind of get an idea of what you might do to get a character to look a certain way, right? So, we have neutral going into happy. You can just have like, kind of a smile with the lips closed or whatever, or a fuller smile where you're showing teeth and then maybe your eyes are crinkling a bit, eyebrows have gone up. And then to transition back to neutral, or to transition to another emotion, basically, we have these steps of the smile progressively getting bigger, going up, and then you just kind of repeat those frames to go, back, down to this more kind of neutral position. So, you can just, use frames that you've had to kind of transition and detransition from one into the next, like, oh, if I don't know how to like draw, this kind of weird in-between phase, hopefully you can kind of just work it out in your mind, like, you can also onion skin too, like, okay, I'm starting here, I kind of want to end here, what do I need to do in between? So there we have happy, for something, like a character is curious or maybe like questioning. You have one eyebrow going down, the other going up a little bit, as well as this tilt to the head. Body language and other gestures can also kind of be used to convey a feeling. For anger, the eyebrows are a bit more tilted, angled downward and inward. I also did take the eye and transform it a bit. I went into the transform tool and shrunk it, so I had it kind of like, squashed, like she was squinting her eyes and being a bit angry. And, for sadness, sadness, as you can see, is where we have the biggest change in the eyebrows, because they're pretty arched and angled throughout, but when you're portraying like a sad character, you want them kind of like sloped and going a bit, downward in this kind of position. So, I did have to change a bit the eyebrow shape, and as you can see, I do have the kind of, transition, so we start here, go through here, and then end, at this kind of point. And the same with sadness, so you have your just general kind of run-of-the-mill like frown going on. Also, to express sadness, you can use bigger eyes. As you can see, I did just transform the eyes to make them a little bit bigger. Again, with the kind of lower lid going up, perhaps, if, the character, may potentially cry. And we have this lip quiver, which, as you can see, I animated this, mostly on twos and kind of eased in and out of the emotions. So once you're at like the peak of whatever emotion, you know, you're trying to express, you want to rest on that kind of for a long time. So like this full smile here is about 5 frames, as well as like, you know, this full kind of angry look. But lip quivering is like a really like subtle movement, so that's just a really tiny change in the lips, just kind of lowering, you know, this bottom line. And that's just animated on the ones. And it's just like a subtle, nice little movement that can add, you know, a much greater element of emotionality. And also, while we're here, you can see that there's a bit of shading. I didn't do this. This was mostly just a demo file, and I didn't do it according to the palletized versions of what we have in the simulation. But, for example, if this was colored according to palletized, you know, versions, this shading over here on the side would probably be skin B, as well as in the ears. We don't really have a highlight color or a third skin color. I just did that for the demo file. And you can also use this kind of blue here, as opposed to this gray would be like, that would be essentially your hair B version if you ever wanted to add shading to the hair, which is something you may want to consider for shots that are like, you know, close up or focused on the hair for a long time, as well as, you know, what type of hair you're trying to express. For example, like here we have kind of like, you know, this like afro hair, it's put into puffs, it's got a lot of volume and a lot of texture going on, and, you know, the more texture that could be happening is kind of, you know, the more, you know, shading you might want to add, as well as like depth. So if you have hair that, you know, is really kind of swoopy, and there's like, you know, a part where, you know, there's just a lot of hair like separated, like, you know, from the skull or something, that might be another point at which to add shading. These are just examples, but overall, that's just, again, a quick file showing how to transition between and demonstrate a character interpreting certain emotions based on whatever the scenario is. I'll just play through that one more time, and just feel free to reference this whenever, you know, you're wondering how a character might feel in the scenario and how to interpret that in an animated way, because I think artists sometimes aren't always used to drawing emotional expressions, and that's just with straight drawing. But then with animation, you also need to consider transitioning from one to the other and how to do that naturally.